Hey everyone, welcome back to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. We are going to stick up in the Northeast. We just had a great conversation with the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Hampshire College. We're going to stay out in that space and talk to my colleague Beth Feinberg-Keenan, who is a former financial aid officer at Northeastern University. Hey Beth, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ian.
So let's jump right in because we're talking about tuition reciprocity agreements, and these agreements are not simple. And there are many of them, and they're all a little bit different. So let's just start with the absolute basic fundamental understanding. What is a tuition reciprocity agreement?
So a tuition reciprocity agreement is an agreement between, typically it's public universities, but you're able to attend an out-of-state public institution and you're not going to necessarily be paying what non-residents pay. I mean, that's pretty cut and dry of like what it is.
Okay, gotcha. So there are a lot of students who want to look out of state. I think maybe they say most of the students in my high school are going to this university, and so I'm going to go elsewhere, but I want to be close to home. And of course, I want to lean on one of these agreements so I can get a cheaper experience overall. What are the programs out there that allow students to pay in-state prices for an out-of-state school?
So there's four major programs, and
Okay.
it's really broken down geographically. So if you live in, just kind of picture a map of the United States, and you live in the Southeast, you have the academic common market, and that is 15 participating states in the Southeast. Some states that do not participate are North Carolina, Florida, and Texas only participate for graduate programs.
Okay.
But this is the kicker. So you can't say, hey, like I live in South Carolina and I really want to go to school in Tennessee because I've always wanted to go to the University of Tennessee, because you're not necessarily going to qualify and get in-state tuition, or you're going to get a discount because you want to go to the University of Tennessee. The kicker is you actually have to go to a school that provides a major that's not offered in your state. So okay. I was just looking around last night on the site saying, okay, like let me just play around, and I just used South Carolina. I said, hey, I want to study zoology. Where can I go and get a bachelor's in zoology? And so the only option for me to do that was going to be the University of Oklahoma. So while you have all of these states in the Southeast, you have, Alabama, you have Louisiana, Tennessee. I can't go to Tennessee because I'm not going to get a discount there. Gotcha. I was stuck with, that I could only go to the University of Oklahoma, but they have a great tool on their website. And that's what I really liked. I can say, hey, what state I'm from, what I want to study, and it's going to provide me a list of schools to see what's going to meet my qualifications of what I want to study.
Okay. So that's the academic common market, and they have a website where you can go punch that stuff in.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Now, if you live in the Northeast like me, you mentioned that. So if you live in the Northeast, we have the New England Regional Tuition Break. And that works very much like the academic common market, but it's the 6 New England states that participate with this program. Okay. So again, you have to, if you want to go to a school outside of your state, that major can't be offered at a public institution in your state. Unlike the academic common market, they don't have a nice little tool that you can say, hey, I'm from this state and I want to study that. But they have brochures and they have documents on their site which say what schools and what majors you can actually attend to get that degree. And depending on like where you live in the state, there are some states that have relationships with colleges because of proximity. I live in Massachusetts by Foxborough, and I know that some of my friends who live in Rhode Island, because I'm only 10 minutes from Rhode Island, they are able to go to Bristol Community College in Massachusetts because they're just right over the border, and they're paying what residents pay in Massachusetts. So there might be some, but it's only for commuter students too. It's not like I want to go to like that 4-year public institution because I live closer by. It's I want to be able to commute to that school.
I understand.
Because it's going to be less expensive.
Okay, so that covers New England.
That covers New England.
Where else are we looking for these?
The Midwest.
The Midwest.
So big there's space. The Midwest Student Exchange. Yeah. And that's only 8 participating states. Okay. So it's not all of the Midwest. Illinois is not one that participates. So that's a big one that we might have a lot of listeners who are from Illinois. Yeah. They no longer participate. And that's within the past year or so that they no longer participate. But students who are within the Midwest region, they can go to, again, a public institution, and they're going to pay 50% more than what residents pay. So
Okay.
if your cost of attendance is $10,000 because you live in X state as a resident, and I'm coming from another state, then I'm going to be able to pay $15,000 for tuition and fees.
Okay. And that
So
will typically be less than the full out of state cost of attendance.
yes.
Okay.
And then also a lot of the flagships don't participate. So your University of Michigan doesn't participate. University of Wisconsin-Madison doesn't participate. So it might not be all of the institutions. It might not be some of the more selective institutions
Mhm.
that you're automatically going to qualify and say, hey, I've always wanted to go to, University of Wisconsin-Madison or University of Michigan as my dream school. You can still apply, but you're not going to get a discount because of where you live within the Midwest.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I think you've named so far
Three.
25 states covered by 3 different programs, and we've left some stuff out for sure. What's the last one? Is the last one covered 25 states? Does it fill it all in? I don't think so, right?
It doesn't, and it's probably one of the larger ones. The Western Undergraduate Exchange. It's actually, I was gonna say, where you live, Ian,
That's
out in the
right.
west,
That's right. Hit me with
and
it.
that covers 16 states.
Okay.
And I find that this is actually a very popular one, especially when I'm having conversations with friends of mine who live in the western part of the United States. And this is just like the Midwestern one that you're paying 150% more than what residents pay. So that
Mhm.
same example. But what I have found with the Western Undergraduate Exchange is it's also not all majors.
Mm.
So the Western Undergraduate Exchange is also known as WUI. And
Yeah.
if you go to their website, you can actually do a search and you can see what majors at what schools participate. Like as an example, with Arizona, if you want to go to, I think it's the University of Arizona, it's like you have to study mining. Okay, well, most students I speak with aren't going to study mining.
Yeah. I don't think
So they're
so.
not necessarily going to be able to get a discount at that institution. Your flagships don't participate. Your University of Washington, your UCs, other than UC Merced, don't participate, but your Cal States do. Um, so you want to make sure that you're looking at what major you want to study and what are the requirements, because I have found also with WUI that it's not automatic. Some schools have a certain number of spaces, and
Mhm.
some schools might also have required GPAs that you have to have in order to be considered to get that discount.
And so fundamentally, when you look at all of these programs, what we're kind of seeing as a trend is this is about setting something up partly for institutions so that they can draw more students in that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, which is why your UCs, your universities of Michigan, your University of North Carolina, they're not participating because they have enough students. They don't need to have this incentive for students to potentially choose them. So it's a great program, especially I think if you're looking at some of these, not flagship, but next most notable public institutions in many of these states. It's a great way to find this opportunity. You've explained a few ways that families can learn about this, including going to these websites, maybe typing in what states they're in. Are there any other programs that people should be aware of? We've got these big ones, but are there some smaller ones that everybody can look into as well?
There are definitely some smaller ones. If you live in Minnesota, they have reciprocity with some neighboring states. There's the University of Minnesota that students can automatically get considered for discounts if they live in the Dakotas, if they live in Wisconsin, or if they live in Manitoba. And
Okay.
it's something that's automatically considered when they apply to the University of Minnesota,
Well,
but
that's
there's an
good.
additional application that they have to get completed by their state, which is on the University of Minnesota's website.
Gotcha.
Um, the University of Maine is another one. It's been around for a little bit of time, but the University of Maine also has a program that they are allowing discounts to students who meet certain GPA requirements, because there's 3 different tiers with the University of Maine. But again, if they want to go to the University of Maine, it's worthwhile checking that out to see if they could get a discount at that institution. And then there's just a number of neighboring state ones. I mean, just I was gonna say, look online to see that if there are any any neighboring state discounts. I've seen them in the Southeast between Georgia and between some of the states, in that territory. I've also seen them down in like Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas, which are more for the community college, but again, another great opportunity if that's the route that the student wants to go.
Great reminders there. Now, within our internal team chat, we recently posted a news item about new programming in New York. And because it's such a big state with so many students who live there, what can you tell us about this new New York program with the State University of New York system, the SUNY system?
So again, it is a new program. It's starting just with the fall of 2023, that class, but you have to be from a group of states. So if you live in Connecticut, if you live in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, California, and New Hampshire, Vermont, and Illinois, you can get
Hmm.
not in-state tuition, but you're paying what your state's tuition is based on your flagship institution. So Massachusetts, University of Massachusetts Amherst, Connecticut, University of Connecticut Stores,
Mhm.
and you would be automatically considered for that if you're coming from one of those states.
Interesting. So creating a little bit of mobility flow of students from different states into New York sounds like a smart strategy for the SUNY system. We really went through that really quickly. I'm sure we'll be able to catch up on a Q&A, and listeners, if you've got any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them to our inbox, gettinginvoiceamerica@gmail.com. Beth, thanks a lot for coming and explaining these, giving us that crash course today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ian, for having me.
Happy to have you. Folks, when we come back next week, Sally will be in the hosting chair. She's going to be talking to the Director of International Admissions at Boston University to talk about what's new at BU. So that's a really exciting segment. You won't want to miss it. We'll also talk about what to do now that early decisions are starting to come out. So join us for that if you've got any ED applications and federal student loan repayment options and updates. There is constant change on this news item, and our college finance team is the best at helping you to understand where things are going. So we'll see you all here next week. In the meantime, enjoy this final month of 2022.